Check, check.
Check, check.
Chat, chat, chat.
Check, check.
I got you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, welcome back, everyone. Today, Daniel and I are joined by someone who left a lasting impression on us when we first met him at the Sacred Sons retreat a couple years ago. Hunter Toran. His presence and ceremony, especially his Hawthorne ritual, revealed what I would call rare depth and mastery that we won't forget. So, Hunter is a registered ISMETA somatic educator and therapist, an energetic body worker, musician, poet, and ceremonialist. I got that right off your website there. With compassion and humor, he helps people overcome chronic pain, anxiety, and depression, not just through body work, but by building and guiding them back to their innate genius. So his work blends movement, meditation, and play to help individuals unravel the subconscious patterns that keep them stuck and step into a more fluid, embodied expression of freedom and connection. So tonight, or today, I should say, we're going to be exploring Hunter's journey into this work, how men's spaces are evolving, what may be missing in modern relationships between the sexes, and how we can restore balance through ritual, movement, and deeper presence. So, Hunter, we are honored to have you here. Welcome, man.
It's great to be here, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's stirring the memory pot already, so it's feeling good, soulful.
I appreciate that, Hunter. I was going to ask you, if it pleases you, would you like to take us through, and our audience, through a little mini ceremony to get our energies aligned for this beautiful discussion we're going to have?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's work with something that came up the other day with a client, a coaching client, and talking about those times when we wake up instantly critical of the world. You ever have that feeling where you just wake up, it's like this guy and this thing and, and like all this bullshit out there.
Oh, yeah.
And, I know I've woken up that way. And, there's two ways to look at it. It's one that we're projecting outwardly the inadequacies and failures that we feel from within. But a simpler way to move towards it is that we've lost our gratitude, that our gratitude has slipped away from us a little bit, and there's a lot of journaling ideas and techniques, and a lot of it is listing, right? Make the list, go through it, which is good too. But let's cultivate gratitude for a single thing and begin to look into one thing a little bit more deeply. So as always, in the somatics of things, we always begin by lifting our hearts upwards in order to find an upright, a nice seated position, and we close our eyes down. We exhale all the wind, and we draw deep. Anali. Skilama. And just begin to listen for a moment. And we look for a single relationship, really, is what we're looking for. A single relationship, whatever comes up first. The first one in your mind. Hold that person. Begin to create the details of them in your mind. Maybe you've seen this person age and grow, and try and go back to the beginning of the crossings of your rivers, the weavings of your blankets. And with this person, can you move forward through the meeting, the connection, to the time of conflict? Maybe the first conflict, maybe you remember it, maybe you don't, but the feeling of conflict and where it's arisen. And you see that person in that moment, of conflict. You offer them a single white rose. And moving forward from that place in time, look at what's been consistent in terms of support for a person you're building gratitude for, consistent in terms of connection, shared purpose. And you see that person shining in their skill, even if it's not coming forward all the time. See that person shining in their genius. And you offer them a single white rose. And then you turn and you see if you can feel that person at your side. What is the space they take up? And together you look out and face a horizon over an endless sea and a rising sun. And there streaming in from the east is all warmth, all nourishment. Through the light of our sun. What is it to receive a sunset, to feel it touch your face, the first warmth after the cold of night? And can you feel it also through the face of the one who is beside you? Begin to stomp your heels a little bit, coming home from the dream, the waking dream. Get some rhythm, some tempo in your heels. Whatever your heels want to thump today. Open your eyes and we can always blow a kiss to those who are with us.
Thank you so much, Hunter. I appreciate you, man.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm glad you put me on the spot. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, we can start that way.
Well, Hunter, we managed to put together a bit of an audience here with the work we've been doing. I think the mission is the same, just from different angles, right?
Mm,
We've been kind of coming at it through doing the instincts. We talk about our instincts, the 7 basic human instincts: fear, lust, rage, care, play, seeking, and grief. And that's kind of based on some of this depth psychology, avenue that we've been going through. So
mm,
we talk about it essentially as like waking up the instincts, getting back into, the body, like what you're saying as well. I think there's a lot of overlap, and we could, spend a lot of time on that. But today I really want to celebrate you and your work. And if you could, do you mind kind of giving us a little background on you and get us caught up into what propelled you into your current work?
sure. Yeah. It's interesting. The 7 instincts is something I've thought about, more so even from coming into contact with you brothers. And the word instinct is interesting. It ties up people in their impulses, right? And to me, it's not so different from what drives me to my work. Is that it's a instinct to move in this way. And then there's also this other word that I'd just like to introduce around the 7, which is the 7 reflexes.
Hmm.
Um, And because the reflexes always imply that the subconscious is at work. For me, instinct can be elevated too as well, which I know you brothers do. But for me, coming to this point in place, what is it? My own social um, restlessness, discomfort, and um, critic, I guess, to begin with, is what began it all. Just being a teenager and being like, what's going on around me? This is madness. Why is everybody so elevated and dramatic? Why is everybody having such a difficult time with their creativity? Including myself. And my path has been long and wandering. In the beginning, for me, it was really a retreat and healing into the wild places of the American West that gave me respite and a sense of deep, abiding peace that resides with the earth, which was something that I recognized also from earlier times in my life, times of innocence. And, as life went on and I engaged in the trades and fatherhood, working with the earth, but continuously searching within along, mostly through esoteric Western paths, came to a real desire to just work with people because I had become very solitary in my work, mostly doing stonework, actually, masonry work, finding balance and getting PhD in gravity. And so I began to embark at the age of 35 to re-educate myself and to begin to look for a more social outlet for the stirring within me and a great desire to share peace and also to move into a place where conflict could be addressed more deeply. And for myself too, I was at a time where I was pretty beat up physically and wanted to engage in a route that was healing for myself while I moved forward. And so I spent 8 years studying and co-teaching and lead teaching between the ages of really 35 and 42. And have been practicing ever since and looking for cultural applications of this agreement that we wear, that we have a body, that we agreed to come, that we have work to do here, that I'm going to feel discomfort in this, and that discomfort is a signpost to move towards, not away from. It is the body that has captured a chapter, a story that is written with the ink of pain, the ink of discomfort, the ink of dissatisfaction and chronic jitteriness, whatever it is, how it manifests in the human being. And so working with the body and engaging the body more deeply through movement arts, I've learned that one can be liberated through an educational platform. Movement is the language of life. And so the body itself can be given new opportunities, new ways to feel, new ways to think by engaging it more deeply, because there's a universe of terrain to explore within. So right now, I'm mostly looking for cultural and clinical ways to express these things. And it's the cultural piece is the ever evolving, and I think that's what draws us together, as you said, the lasting memories in one's path will be cultural. So just trying to hit on all pillars, try and have some offering for all 7 instincts or reflexes, and to move with it and to collaborate with brothers like you. So here we are today. Thank you.
Yeah, what comes to mind when you talk about, maybe I'm paraphrasing, but correct me if I'm wrong, where you said like the language of life is movement. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't help but to think of my boys who are in school sitting still for 8 hours a day. It's like, man, that's tough, you know. And I mean, we were there, you know. I
Mm.
did it too, and that's tough. You know, it's tough when that's kind of what we're taught. That's how we're brought up. So yeah, it's interesting just learning how to break free of that and just
Mm.
being agents of change in that regard.
Yeah, the chair is an enemy of masculinity.
I'm sitting in one now.
Well, you know, it has its benefits too. But that's, you know, it's like people often is like, well, how did men get where they are? I'm like, well, they went to school, first of all, and were asked to sit down for 6 hours a day. That was a big root of the problem,
Yeah,
you know, and to not be following those who they could emulate in physical skill and the application of artisan craft, you know. And maybe we found that in other places, but I think the majority of people were asked to sit down for 6 hours. And you've seen how physical education has been drawn out more and more. I mean, I was lucky enough, we had gym class 3 days a week and then 2 days a week, kind of alternating. um, I know that's been reduced and more excuses for not being there has been there, but yeah, man, you
yeah,
know.
I find it interesting too, just to piggyback on that. When you talk about movement and how important it is, and it would seem to me that when we talk about healing or recovering this dormant part of ourselves that's been muted by this cultural oppression or whatever you want to call it, it it feels like we all have this innate impulse or reflex to recover that. And in our attempts to do so, we spend a lot of time in our intellect trying to recover it, or our emotional part of ourselves, but without connecting it to actual movement, like you're saying. And I always feel like when we want to heal something, we have to do it on all planes of existence, right? Emotional, physical, spiritual, intellectual. It has to occur on all planes. But I could see that the basis, like it's almost like the proof that we're actually doing it is when we give birth to it through physical expression, right? Like this is the base level experience where it has to occur. Like it's almost like without it being physically expressed in some way, it has no merit, right? We waste our time just spinning out in our heads and our minds, and we never really give birth to it in the world.
yeah. Like in other words, you could call it like the fruit of the spirit. You know, it's like just trying to intellectually like adopt everything and heal and just speaking about it, talking about it, but without holistically integrating it at every level. You know, it's like it's not gonna. It won't be the fruit of your spirit. You know, the spirit in which you operate.
That's really true. I mean, a movement is programmed, especially those who've been in the military have been programmed to move in a very specific way. People carry the gestures of their parents, which all have emotional roots, and those roots are oppressive, and keep one from one's spirit. You know, movement gives the opportunity for what is most important in expression, which is rhythm. It gives the opportunity to bring tempo and syncopation to the expression, and the body itself is an expression of that. You know, what's the opposite of a busy head is a still head, or you know, something that is supported by the stillness of the spheres, and then it descends. And right, this is where men struggle, dropping down into the rhythm of the ribs. The ribs are a rhythmic laying out of um, you know, skeletal space into the freedom of the limb, where it then becomes expressive, you know. And so things like the phone, which bring the whole world within one's personal space, and the hand ends there, is the opposite of what we're talking about, which is creativity, right? And I believe all violence is rooted in the suppression of creativity. Um, so it's how we interact with the world. It's how we also learn to emulate the world or live what can be referred to as an elemental life, to feel the elementalness within us, so that we have a greater awareness, and ultimately that's what movement is about for me, is creating greater awareness outside of oneself. It's like, well, I want to feel my body more, okay, but only to feel it less. And because we want to feel more with the body rather than to feel the body more, because ultimately if we feel the body more, it is what draws our attention in the body, right? Hunger, pain, right? Judgmental wheel thinking, hamster wheel thinking, right? These things. And it cuts us off from what's outside of ourselves. So we do need to come in, right, all the way to the heel, right? The healing. Can you get down there and begin to think with your heel and know what it's doing and put it into good time, good gait, good pace? And then can you let go of that and expand your awareness with the body? Can you wake up the mind body in order to perceive others more clearly and with more warmth
Yeah,
and less projection?
you bring to mind, I do feel like I'm a type 1 diabetic, right? I was diagnosed at 11. I think
Mm.
there's many lenses through which I can look at that disease and how it manifested. They tell you in Western culture, oh, it's a genetic issue and all these things, and it was just very cold interpretation. But for me, it would seem that it was like I lost the sweetness of life, like the ability to play, right? There's a mythopoetic lens through which I like to understand it. But I remember for years that all I was doing was denying this disease, like running away from it. Like you're saying, like you have to get into the body to feel it first so that you don't feel it. And for so many years I was like running away from this disease, just pretending if I didn't face it that it wouldn't exist, and it was this dissociation thing that only ever made it worse, made the symptoms worse, made it just flare up and scream, hey, you need to see me. And it wasn't until I fully embraced this thing that the actual symptoms were treatable, manageable, to where I could actually go into what I would say is like my play instinct that was cut off at such a young age, where I started to have to take things so seriously and I lost that sweetness, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that innocence, I often ask men to track the loss of innocence,
Mm.
where that sweetness was, because it is an innocence that true sweetness exists, you know, and to be able to search back and remember those times, and then when it's lost, this is one of the initiations of life, the more painful ones, the initiation of the loss of innocence. And I mean, it happens younger, is so young with some people, for some people it was never allowed to exist at all, you know.
Mm.
So I think that's a beautiful lens to look through it. And people need to get out of the mind of like, if I find the sweetness, I'll cure my diabetes, but that it is a continuous reminder to find that levity of play, because as men we'll need that reminder all the time, right? And perhaps it will, in time you become so elevated in your play that it overcome um, all things are possible under the sun. So
Mm.
it is important to find those mythopoetic connections, you know, um, to not over exalt them and make gods of them, but to allow them into your life as gods in a way, in that they can direct our thinking. They can direct our hearts back to something, right? There's motion. They bring us back to the verb, right? That is another way to look at it. Life is a verb,
Mm.
and that's why the indigenous languages would have, for wind and water, there'd be, dozens of words, because they come in also so many different conditions. And English itself is a subjective language, right? It makes subjects of things and people, right? And so that is reflected in the schooling, in the education, right? Which is the crafting of the culture, which is done in boxes and seated, right? And so movement requires spirals. It requires expansion and a contractive point, which is the first step in overcoming I think Daniel was talking about it, which is really the programming, the freedom that has been taken can be found in motion, in movement, in the body. And that's where you're going to find shadow too, right? Especially we see with men, it's the house of shame, right?
Yeah.
The storehouse of it.
You talk about the house of shame. I find what we've discovered lately going through doing our men's group, and we were dealing with the lust instinct. And so, the challenge was to retain our seed for 30 days. And
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about the shame and talk about a a pocket of shame, nothing more pronounced than I think our lust instinct, which is connected to movement, obviously, because of our, the hunter in us. Yeah. And our need to uh what would it be, to demonstrate and to move in a way that is harmonious with this opposing energy, right? The feminine. And it kind of brings me to my next point is Hunter, what do you think is, when we look at the broad spectrum of things, when we talk about this kind of sickness of our modern culture and this issue between the sexes, and do you work specifically with men?
No, not at all. I generally end up working privately with women more, and have been moving more into co-ed spaces, begin to create events and find my co-facilitators in that world as well. So it was just, and it began, it was never like my intention when I became a somatic therapist counselor that I'm going to work with men. And in fact, in the beginning, it was primarily women, because women have a tendency to take care of themselves and want to root out the problem more, and men will just stuff it more and more. And then, in 2020, coming into the men's work through the Sacred Sons and having that be a focus, and the whole world asking it to be a focus, right? So it was very educational for me, very formational, to be in that space in such a pronounced manner, and also now there's great relief working with women more again too, because it's intense, as to go into those pressure cookers with men. You said something around shame that I just wanted to touch on. And I think it's most important when addressing shame is looking at how it cuts us off from receiving, and our relationship, our ability to receive, right? Because ultimately the voice is, you're not worthy, you're garbage, you're all these things, all these voices. And so we cut off from the help that's offered. And that's why it's so continuously important to look up and see who is there, right? Who's still there, who's offering to you, in what ways that might require us to grow up, right? And the other piece of it too is relating it to movement is, what is this impulse, this instinct of lust looking to do, is to be the foundation of creativity, to become the muse, to be given an opportunity to express itself beyond sexuality, but still that core passion being in the offering, the expression of right? Which could be as simple as making banana bread for your neighbor, whatever it is. But that impulse to be creative or to be within something larger than ourselves that is productive towards a service in the world, that is the expansion of the instinct of lust, whereas the reflex is often to sexuality, 99 times out of 100 probably, you know or can we take that same energy, right, and cultivate it, put it into movement? The word retention is something that I struggle with as a movement guy, because it's like can become like this like clutching. So we need to remember that essence can travel channels and needs to travel channels, and that movement can be a powerful tool, especially softer arts, when working with retention. The ankh is a particular form that the body is. And so in cultivation, with men too, and discipline, it becomes almost like an egoic thing easily. It's like, I'm holding. It's like, but can you stay in the passion, in the sweetness, in the willingness to engage and bring forward eros?
I really appreciate that, because I definitely bumped up against that. When we talk about through this work and that practice, the learning to sublimate or transfer that energy into something creative, keeping the energy moving rather than it becoming so stuck. And then the temptation for my ego to latch on to what I've achieved. Look at me, I've done 3 weeks, right? I'm
Right.
like I'm good enough again, finally, right? It's like all it's more hiding of the shame.
Right. Yeah, it becomes a whip of some kind, like what do they do? Like the Jesuits, and they like flail themselves, is that the word?
Flatulate.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Flatulation.
Yeah,
That's
flatulation.
another thing. I'm pretty sure that comes out your
I
ass.
think that's the word. No, that's another thing. No, that's what's the word? The flatulate. That's funny.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But yeah, that we have to be careful with that, with ourselves, right? And to give ourselves grace, and to offer up ourselves in supplication to a higher power to guide us in these moments too, right? And to not white knuckle it through these challenges to ourselves, but to stay in a prayerful way with it, and to listen to the body deeply. It's yeah, we're learning, right? We're kind of at this place with men where it's like, okay, we've got almost a decade in of the second iteration of things since since the roots with the Mankind Project and Robert Bly and his work. What is masculinity? What does masculinity need? And I feel like the modern men's movement has done a good job of meeting the wild man, so to speak, if you're familiar with that terminology. And I'm interested in where do we go then, right? Because um, the wild man needs expression, which is a movement, an expression of movement, and yet he also needs to refine, as the apprentice to his mastery, that which he will become skillful in, that will be of service to life beyond the wild man. And that's where the modern personal growth paradigm model of 6 to 8 week challenges really begins to disintegrate. And we need to be looking at these deeper time scales of engagement, right? And I know you brothers have really been so thoughtful in the way you moved with the work in your community, because that's the point at which things get shaky, right? And that's the point where the honeymoon wears off, and we need to go into the next layer, a layer that the wild man cannot remediate.
I hear you. Yeah, because I think that I relate with that a lot, and there are times, once the magic wears off, it's like, oh, okay, well, I need to find something else that helps distract me more rather than staying with this through the real test, I guess you could, real challenge. Interesting.
Yeah, what like comes to mind, Hunter, you talk about like the wild man and well, and just like, like what does it mean to like, you know, really heal and to like, take it out of these 6 to 8 week challenges and like the semen retention and all these things and like it's all in the name of like self-help and growth and all these things. Okay, but what then what? What do you do with it? What do you do with all of these revelations that you have and like how do you show up? How do you show up to the ones around you, the ones that count on you the most, the ones that you count on the most, and what comes to mind is like my family, not even so much like my wife and kids, but like then like my brothers and my father. And like, just last night I had a discussion with my older brother. And so I have two brothers. My younger brother, he's doing well. He's like going to therapy and he's like reflective on himself and he's working on himself, much like myself and us here in this space. But my older brother, he's like he's what you would call like he's just like a man's man. He's like kind of like the old tradition where he just like goes to work and he comes home and he just doesn't really open up too much. And God bless him. Like this isn't, any shade or anything that I'm throwing, but it's so, for me, it was really difficult and has proven difficult to open up to those kinds of people. Right. And it was, last night I opened up to him for the first time, like ever. And it was difficult because there's a lot of like terminology that like the self-help community uses that just kind of falls. He's like, well, I don't know what you're talking like. I don't know what that means, and to be able to like navigate through some of these conversations with some people who have no idea what you're talking about, and like that is for me is like the real work there, is like healing like past generational stuff, healing like with people out like, yeah, cause I guess I'm just like, it just came to mind. And so now I'm just kind of speaking on it, it's like, the challenges, the semen retention, the 6 to 8 weeks, whatever, the 10-day meditation, like all that stuff is all great. But it's like, what are you going to do with it? That's the real test,
Yeah, I'm not knocking those things at all. Like, all these opportunities are opportunities for initiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how, and the desire, that we say the honeymoon wears off, but there's also something really beautiful in that desire is that we're actually meant to live in this rhythmic way where we're coming together in a very connected rhythmic way, celebrating the nodes, festivals of life, moving into ordeals, together, into ceremony, into ritual, into connection in a rhythmic way. So, that impulse, that instinct of togetherness is really the root of, some of that discomfort because, while we're not meant to be in a chronic state of bliss and experience, right, we still do best as humans if that plays out in a rhythmic, calendric way, right, as a calendar. So when you talk about your brother, I hear this a lot, like, like that desire to share. And what we need to look at within that desire to share is, are we needing something back from it? Like Tyler was talking about, it's like the same thing of like, look at my achievements. Can we go to those places without a need for reciprocity or understanding? And can we employ the lessons of the sun in the sky? Can we be warm and nourishing in these situations? Can we enter into the human need to be in gratitude and just be an expression of those qualities around people who have not yet stepped into their own personal development. And then to me, that's an integrated man. And,
Yeah,
someone.
it's so funny you say that. Yeah, because that's like one of the first things I told him when I was like, "Hey, I feel something on my heart, and I want to open up about something that I've noticed. And also, I just want you to know that I'm not looking for anything from you. Like, I don't need anything from you. I'm just kind of venting, if you will, and I just want to dive. I just want to drop into this space together,
Mm-hmm.
because that's very important, to let them know, like, hey, I'm not looking for an apology, or I'm not looking for any kind of like to make you feel any type of way or anything. So no, you're right. That's a very important key.
Yeah. It comes bearing the mark of invitation, right?
Yeah.
These, what we desire for those we love can never become a command, right? This is an age of free will, and it's free will is on its heels in the 15th round here. So how do we preserve one's sovereignty while saying, look at this door, right?
Yeah.
And we allow their curiosity of us, to carry, and it might never come, and we can still be warm. We can still remain in our gratitude, and for me, that's the test, and it's most challenging with family.
Yeah, there's the on our healing journeys, as we become more integrated and more real, right? As we become more authentic, a lot of that chronic, insidious pain of living in, a world of our own making in our minds, being trapped in our heads and not in our bodies, and all of that suffering tends to kind of start to dissolve in a way. A lot of us on the path are always looking for the destination of being in complete peace. But what I find is that the more I heal, the pain, the struggle, or you could call it the negative polarity, these places of challenge, often are showing up. And when working with other people, when working with my family and relationships, and it's the challenge of remaining patient while they're not yet willing to, how would you say, because it's not a levels thing, it's more like having patience when you want to radiate like the sun in the sky, give them, show them this love, and they're not yet willing to receive it or collaborate with you in that endeavor. It's this patience of remaining sunlight in that challenge, right? Remaining radiant, while maybe the gifts that you would share aren't necessarily received. I find that to be, the challenge with having walked the path for a little while now. And
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where the golden-hearted warrior archetype can be examined, for the mythopoetic stance in these moments, which is to understand that, they're literally trying to block out the sun, right? We don't need to go down too deep a water hole, but recently they've gotten approval for this plan to create these clouds that have the reflective capacities so that we don't overheat the earth, right? Have you seen this? This is not conspiracy, people. This is like happening,
I've
right?
seen it's wild.
So yeah,
Yeah, there's
you
been
know,
weather control for a long time, and they're spraying all sorts of stuff in the atmosphere. And then, yes, I heard just recently about that same story.
yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah, so for a man, to be in his warrior, often I find the warrior and the wild man have a little too much, they fraternize a little too much with some men, with a lot of men, and so the golden-hearted warrior is in pure patience. He is the one who practices the art of fighting without fighting, by recognizing that there are impulses in the world that are trying to steal his radiance through advertising, through the psycho pop culture, through all, we don't even need to say another word, right? And so the reminder in that can also be found in movement, but also in stillness and the willingness to seek warmth within ourselves, again, which is kindled by the fires of gratitude and praise. So the golden-hearted warrior for me is a fire keeper. He's continuously keeping that golden stoked. And then to step deeper into things, you mentioned, you described masculine and feminine as oppositional, as in opposites or polarities. And yet there's also the quality of the moon that we can begin to contemplate and understand more deeply, right? And this is where you start to get bogged down in the relationship to the feminine and the Christo-Judaic teachings around the feminine. But what if we become more reflective at times of the sun, right? Again, this is living by example for one, but also to be in a way that isn't blinding to people, right? And young men need to learn this, especially because it can push people further away. And also sometimes the moon is new and not there, and that we can begin to understand that although we're a family, although that we're close, there will be these nodes where no light is exchanged between us, and to begin to look for the times, to begin to attune to the times when people are more open. And there will be times, I always say, with teenagers, we learn this, go for a car ride. Don't be face to face, be side by side. Be like, yo, man, I just been wanting to cruise. Let's go take a cruise, go run some errands. And being side by side, which is, if you go back to the first meditation we did, this relationship can be side by side, looking forward into the future. And so there's an energetic advantage to that, and it's less confrontational. Be like, bro, man, I need to connect with you, man. It's like, or even to talk about your heart, people will be like, start to feel it and be like, I'm gonna run away, I'm out. So it's a nuanced thing, right? And as men, we need to be careful to not give too much structure to anything, but to have enough to have, that even keel and that third dimensional responsibility taken care of. But we need to continually evolve and metamorphosize in our ability to be emergent to the needs that we're facing. So yeah, brothers.
You couldn't have said that at a better time, Hunter, especially for me, because especially between me and Daniel, like lately, with the growth, the channel's growth, with our messages getting out there, there's been an energy that comes through me, right? This like, now there's pressure, or like, like, and this need to create, or like this impulse to create more structure to try to contain it. And then this very much like you're saying, instead of being reflective of the sun, me trying to be the sun, and very much blinding what I would say, like Daniel in my relationship, and it's been really beautiful. But there are times when I'm like, he'll bring an idea and I'm like, oh, wait, what about this? What about this? Like I'm just overshining, like overstepping. And I'm like, I can see it happening, and it pains me because at the time, sometimes I'm totally blind because of my own, these deep wounds that have been a catalyst in many ways, right? These things that have happened to me in my childhood, these catalysts that have propelled me to learn certain skills and become better, just so that I could earn maybe the approval I didn't get as a child or something. Sometimes those wounds will still show up in these ways, even though I'm walking this path. So it's this delicate balance, because although the wounds are there, and I don't know if they'll ever totally, it's like, it's almost a part of my personality. It's like this attempt to get rid of them has been kind of misguided in so many ways, but this part of my personality that's both a catalyst and a gift is also in some moments like a curse and a demon, right? That's kind of hurting, or like outshining, or like, trying to control. And it's such a, for me, especially just in the last few months, it's been challenging, and Daniel could probably speak to that too. But so
Yeah.
timing
Yeah. I
couldn't
mean,
be
it's,
more perfect, is what I'm saying. I know.
Yeah. Well, and me too. You know, it's like yeah. You to hit it right on the head on a number of levels. You know, like Tyler said, between us as well, but then also like you said, like with family. You know, it's like you know, my brother and I. You know, it's like I've been the example. Like, you know, it's like I try not to like overshine and like, you know, well, and it's really not like I've waited a long time. You know, I've like let my how I show up kind of do the talking because I'm not gonna. I don't think it's like conducive to like tell somebody like, look at me, can't you see I've changed? You know, like I'm like and I'm doing so great. No, you know, so it's like just let them see. You know. Um, and then in the same breath, like with my sons, you know, for me to be so like the last thing I want to do is be overbearing and like just be the dad that constantly gives advice, as if I, you know, it's like, especially to a young 14-year-old, you know. And it's so funny that Hunter, that you spoke about going for a drive, because just last week I took my son on a night summer drive, you know, and we talked and he opened up about the deepest part of him that he holds so much shame around, you know, and he only opened up because I invited him as an equal. Like I want you to know that if there's anything that you need to talk about, like I'm here for you. And then not as your dad. I'm not here to give you advice, and I'm not here to reprimand you, and I wouldn't even get you in trouble if you opened up about something. But I don't feel like my father invited me. He never gave me that invitation. He never let it be known that he's a safe space. So I said, if you choose not to open up, because I knew he was struggling with something, but he didn't feel safe to open up about what it was. And so I told him, you know, I said, I just want you to know that you can open up with me. And if you choose not to, that's also okay, because I trust your discernment, you know, but if you choose not to open up with me, I don't want it to be because I never made it a safe space for you. So I want you to know that we can open up. And we went on that summer night drive, is what I called it, with the windows down, and and he just opened up in a way that he'd never opened up before. And man, I said, you know, this is beautiful because I just want to know you. You know, more than anything else, I just want to know you. So I think that's well spoken, Hunter, and I think that's what a lot of that's a mark that a lot of people who like do the self help journey and all these things, like we miss that. You know, we miss the discernment of like picking an opportune time to like speak on something, and not every time is the best time. You know, like choosing your battles and not dying on every mountain. You know.
Yeah, beautiful. And yeah, I just wanted to honor Tyler too for, you know, what I saw as an example of true leadership, which is to recognize where this impulse, you know, to be seen and to do can become difficult between people that are in initiative together. So I just wanted to thank you for that, Tyler. And to put it into context, do you feel there's one of the 7 instincts that you feel that is a shadow of that impulse to be overbearing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say it's like a mix. There's like a grief and a seeking and a little bit of fear. I find that, you know, there's this energy. It's like a wave, right? That's really deep in there, right? And it's this fear of, I think at its core, it's this fear of like being seen as unworthy or not good enough, right? Like this deep, like, well, you're just a piece of shit, right? Like, and this kind of paired with this like imposter syndrome, like, oh, if I don't do good enough, then they're gonna find that out about me, and then I'm gonna be unlovable and dismissed. And what I've found is that I've had to revisit this wound several times. Like you said, it's a spiral, right? It's just this kind of revisiting it from different angles as I expand up this journey. And so, you know, when I go into it, when I finally experience the wound, if I'm present and conscious enough, especially building a community like Daniel, who's been a friend with me through all of this, there are times where it's been on full display and my ugliness is fully shining, right? It's just like, and I feel so exposed and vulnerable. And then the very thing I fear doesn't happen, right? It's like this welcoming, right? And it's what I realize is that working with men, because someone once told me that men always come into the world trying to hide their weakness. Women always try to come into the world trying to hide their strength. It's this kind of these, diametrically, like a polarity thing. And and that meant something to me because what I find is that almost all of my personality, my spirituality, my talents, and all of that were built on this desire to keep that part of me hidden. And so the more I'm allowing it to be exposed to the people that can hold it, the people that can recognize it, the people that I can learn to trust, which is other men like you, Hunter, like you, Daniel, then that wound gets the kind of, you know, antibiotics that it needs is this, this tenderness that this I can see your ugliness and I accept you anyways, right? And that to me has been the most valuable thing of my relationship with people like Daniel and my family and brothers like you.
Hmm.
Beautiful. And that's where I really, again, want to bring people back to this idea of reflex. Every time we, approach one of these instincts, there is a reflex that is built in the contextual experience of this soul living in this lifetime, right? It becomes the subconscious being saying, this is how it is. And for me, the most powerful thinking to enter into from that point is what I call a what if thinking, which is a way to look for orientation in the what if it isn't in the direction of this reflex? And what if it is a blessing and I can warm it by facing it, right? Right? Can I add warmth in that way? And ultimately, with the fear impulse, there's the perfection voice, always, 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 right? And that's why Kale, he says so much, right? The ancestors are looking for participation, not perfection, right?
Mm.
Perfection is something that I believe gets in the way of mastery, right? And mastery is something that is given space, deep times, big cycles of 7 years to develop over time. But the perfection voice is, really the enemy of creativity, right? And ultimately, these collaborations are looking to give birth to something that is beyond the individuals, right? And me and Kale do this program, the Council of the Third Way. We've done a bunch of segments on it on my podcast, New Elder Wisdom. That something can arise if we quiet ourselves enough to see it between the individuals, right? Can the authenticity and the stillness be so great that in our collaboration, a creativity is born out of the union of friendship, brotherhood, right? And what does it take to listen to that and to have it be louder than the voice of perfection? Because ultimately, this is rooted in we want to do a good job, right? And that's a good thing, right? We want to be proficient, efficient, effective, right? We want to be helpful, and that's where, Daniel session, it's like the personal growth can be endless, and you will always find new layers of healing needed if it is not applied to service of some kind. It will just become a vortex of perpetuating the life that needs the chronic healing.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. So again, it's very nuanced, this human experience. It's very nuanced, but can be viewed through archetypes, and particularly if they're mythopoetic in their nature.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's funny, and you know, Hunter, thank you for like calling it back to like, you know, what Tyler was touching on, and Tyler, I didn't mean to, you know, blow past it and go towards my own story with, you know, my brothers and my son. That wasn't my intention, but
No, none
you
taken.
know, speaking on the fact that it's like it's so nuanced and it's like it can be complex, you know, because on one hand, it's like, you know, it's like it is beyond each individual, you know, the work that we're doing. It's I try to humble myself into remembering that it's like it's not about me, like I don't really matter. It's about like the men, you know, that we're helping or whoever it is that we're helping. But also at the same time, like of course I matter, you know. And so so there's that beautiful delicate dance, especially in a co-creation, you know, where it's like I hear what this person's trying to do, and but I want to do this, and it's like, okay, so let's find something together that works harmoniously and beautifully, and but also while doing a good job, you know, but also not trying to seek perfection, and like, you know, so it's a beautiful dance. It's a delicate dance.
Yeah, you talked about reflexes. The way we've been calling them complexes, right? It's these survival
Mm,
coping mechanisms that, were born out of the trauma, right? The premature or illegitimately turned on instincts that happened in childhood, right? These complexes develop to keep us safe, right? And they do their job. They do what they're supposed to do, and they're initially protective, but there's a point in which they become very maladaptive because what happened at 5 years old isn't necessarily applicable anymore now that we're 40, So
Yeah.
so we talk about them. I was going to go somewhere. Complexes. So the oh, Daniel, you were saying something and it was good, and I was running with it, and then I lost it.
Well, I see the reflex as the verb that gets us into the complex, you know.
Hmm.
And again, yeah, well, Daniel, you were touching on the nuanced nature of things. You know how it really does. It takes a nimble eye,
mm,
one that can be the true witness. And you know, I often say that the ability of a leader to be in attunement and witness greatly outweighs his toolbox of techniques and rituals,
mm-hmm,
because it invites others into presence, and that is where there's going to be this realm of reflex, complex, and path of liberation or awakening. And so how do we remediate so the reflex is less and less, right? And some people call that regulation, right? Which again is not a term I love, but it's a good introduction to, you have a nervous system, it does things that were shaped in, you know, your trauma, you know. It can quickly become a materialistic expression of domination when we over-regulate. You know, no one regulates better than a psychopath. Um, you know, it can be trained to the point where emotion is lost as well. So I'm kind of going down a tangent. I don't know if you came back to your thought, Tyler.
No, it's okay. I liked what you were saying. You said a reflex is the verb that gets you into the complex. I get that. It's like the action we take that inflames the wound or brings the wound to the surface, right? It's
Yeah, the knee-jerk reaction that topples you backwards into a prison of karma in your own making.
right, and that in itself is also the opportunity.
Yeah.
That's where the healing it can take place. That's where the antibiotics can, like anytime I like the story I was sharing is anytime I get triggered into this place of feeling, not good enough or risk of abandonment or any of these wounds that happen to me, when the complex fails, right? When it doesn't have a strategy anymore, and finally the wound is laid bare, there's this risk of abandonment. It's always going to come with all the things that seemingly were happened at the time the wound occurred, right? It's going to feel like the same thing. And that's also the place where we need to learn to be the most present so that we can walk through that. And I think that your work speaks to that, and this idea of ceremony and ritual and presence and learning how to get into the body and feel those things without running from them.
Yeah. Yeah. We can begin to overcome the reflex or the verb by understanding what the body does when that situation arises that puts us into a pre-programmed reactive state. Right? And so what are we trying to regain is the even ground of sovereignty, of choice, right? And so how do we not only learn the tools, and so many people and men are in an emergency state a lot of the time, kind of white knuckling it through life. And so somatics is the route. You can talk about it forever. I don't think it's going to go away. But until we learn what the body does, I once got a very traumatizing email, and for a long time, just my email notice lighting up, I would like kind of clamp down on my right jaw. Right, I was writing a story of contraction, of pulling away, of not being able to express myself fully through a contraction, and that's generally how trauma plays out in its writing in the body. Yes, it keeps a score, but it really keeps a story, and the body itself stores those things. This is not a computer. The head is not a hard drive. They cannot find where the memories lay in it because they do not lay there. They are in the mind, body, in the soft tissue, which is a lot of time one of the rituals we do is to actually squeeze it out, to wring the body out in a pretty intense way, to bubble it up to the surface where it can be grieved, right? And I know you men understand that how important the tears that we shed together were, and how it's, to me, that is what has preserved the connection here, is that we grieve together and we praise together. Right, but the grief itself is the watering of the dry soils of cultureless culture. So it's part of the path, but it is not to be regarded as, well, personal development and grief should not become the primary identity, right? And that is ultimately what we're going to be dealing with ourselves and with men, is who the hell am I? What is my identity? What is it an expression of? And how do I take control of that? And, to get to the point to find out it doesn't matter so much, but we, that is where we are in the so-called West, or really the American consciousness. It gets blamed on the West, but there are plenty of people in the West that still live in an indigenous creative manner. So it's going to require, commitment and endurance to be effectual in our worlds, and it's going to take that persistent patience of the golden-hearted warrior, so that the orphan within can come and sit by the brook and find stillness and nourishment, and bring forward culture that touches the people's hearts in a deeper way, because it is new and old, right? We in the now, the new old way, and the seeking of that together will require vulnerability. It will require profound courage, and it will require not knowing things, which is for men going to be the trickiest thing, to actually see not knowing as an altar of discovery, and a place where the reflex is going to play out and want to bring structure, because you call them complexes, because ultimately that's what the reflex is seeking to do, is to create structure, right? To create a shadow masculine aspect, whereas that structure occasionally needs to be gutted, so to speak, and given a chance for more spiral. Anyway, I'm going on and on.
I know that's so I got a question for you, Hunter. So for the man that is tuning into this and they're listening and they're hearing what we're saying, and some of it's resonating, but there's this deep kind of gravity that's pulling at them, maybe whispering, well, this sounds great, but it's not for you. How do we give someone like that a kind of hope?
To say it's not for you is to say you do not have a body. And to say you do not have a body is to say that you do not have a space to hold in life, that you do not have a space to be present within. And so I would say this, that if you have a body and you have the courage to continue this life and to continue to recognize that there's a desire in you to feel and do better, that the first step is with you. And you need to look out beyond yourself at what's happening and be courageous enough to get started and involved. And that can look like reaching out to a friend. It can look like reaching out to a family member. It can look like reaching out to the men on the screen. But to say this work is not for you would be a profound untruth, because you have a body. And these are not things that we can debate anymore. These are the truths of the matter, that this experience of you is a great responsibility. And so I would say that you are worthy of responsibility. You are worthy of doing, and you are worthy of peace. And there are others who are walking this path with you. Find them and move with it, because life needs you to be a tender of life. Right? And it takes time, and it takes grief, and it takes the ability to look beyond our own grief for what is to be grateful for. So gratitude and praise. Surrender yourself to the not knowing. Surrender yourself to the discomfort, and you'll find great fruit. And if not that, go the fuck outside right now. Take off your shirt and lay on the ground and absorb some sun. That is a gift for you. And if it's raining, take off your shirt anyway and receive the rain. That's a gift for you. So yeah, that's about what I got on that, brother.
Very nice.
I love that, man. I can't think of a better way to kind of close this podcast out. I feel that we've touched on so much here, and we'll give our audience some time to integrate what we discussed, and perhaps we'll have you on again. But Hunter, where can we find you, man?
Yeah, so you can find me at huntertoran.com. You can find me on Instagram under Hawthorne Clan 13. You can find me, where else am I? That's pretty much it, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting on Spotify, you can find the New Elder Wisdom podcast, and I am offering an online circle space, which I'll be advertising soon, which is a place to come together in the pillars. There's going to be a lot of offerings on there, counseling, but also a lot of movement offerings as well. We've been beta testing. It's been going really well, doing some functional movement, but as an educational portal. So keep your ears open for that. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
All right, Daniel.
Thank you, Hunter.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm just thank you, Hunter. I appreciate it. It's always such a pleasure speaking with you. Yeah, and to just piggyback on what came to my mind when you were giving your last spiel is to talk to any of the men who's on the fence, man. It's like it really is courageous to step into this, and the juice is so worth the squeeze. Is all I wanted to say. So worth it, So,
yeah.
And that's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And always, thank you to our audience for tuning in, and feel free to check us out on thecountercomplex.com. We have a men's community. You're welcome to join. And what else? Anything else? No, we're good. I think that's it, man. I appreciate you, Hunter. Hopefully we can collaborate more in the future. I'd love to get our men involved with your circles that you've been putting on. I think it'd be a good and fruitful thing for everyone. So we'll talk about that more. And
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, brother. Thanks for all the work you've done, man. Congratulations on this channel growing, and you're proof of the pudding. This is about, the culture that comes forward will be proof of the work you've done, and this has grown fast, and may it continue to sharpen you into mastery. I look forward to all things coming from the Counter Complex corner. So big up yourselves. Love you.
thank you again. And
Much love.
just a quick tribute, it wouldn't have been possible without everyone behind this movement. Daniel involved, everyone. It's been amazing. So thank you again. And peace. Love you guys.
Peace.